Hey everybody, it's Sam Gordon, our Raiders reporter, as well as me, Heidi Fang, and we're going to start breaking down the offense now as you've been with us here through the offseason as we break down the Raiders by position. And here we go with the offense, starting off with quarterback Sam. This has been interesting, to say the least, right?
It has been, Heidi. Absolutely. What a way to start the offseason.
So let's get into it. First, we've heard about Derek Carr and the fact that Deshaun Watson is out there, and perhaps after the season that Derek Carr has had, because he was very prolific when you look at the numbers this year, he could be somebody that they look to trade or see what his trade value is, but they're not, like you said, we were talking before we started here, they're not necessarily shopping him. So Sam, what do you think is the story here with Derek Carr and Deshaun Watson?
Heidi, I think Derek Carr is a very good quarterback who's coming off of a very good season. Well, you could contend the best season of his career, right? He completes 67.3% of his passes for 4,100 yards, 27 touchdowns against nine interceptions. His passer rating of 101.4 was a career high, second most yards he's averaged per game. And his interception percentage of 1.7 is the third lowest mark of his career. He was taking care of the ball. He was pushing the ball downfield. He was moving around in the pocket a little bit better, a little more than he has in years past, and taking advantage of his legs. He's an athletic guy, and he showcased that this past year. And at only 29 years of age, just coming off of his third season in John Gruden's offense, he's getting better. It feels like he's getting more comfortable and that his prime years are still ahead of him. And being that the quarterback market this offseason is unlike anything we've ever seen, it makes sense that other teams would at least kick the tires on a guy like Derek Carr, being that if you're a team like Washington or a team like New Orleans or a team like Chicago, he can solidify the roster that you already have. Now, our colleague, like you mentioned, Heidi, Vinny Bonsignore, reported that other teams were going to look or were going to inquire as far as what it would take to get Derek Carr. That doesn't mean the Raiders are shopping him. I think they're very content with what they have in Derek Carr. But like you said, if Deshaun Watson's available, he's one of only a handful of quarterbacks that's a clear and obvious upgrade over Derek Carr. And it feels like the Raiders are going to want to do their due diligence there. So due diligence all around, but the Raiders have the leverage. They are in the driver's seat because they have Derek Carr, 29 years of age, about to be 30, under contract, coming off for the best year of his career.
I like to compare things to cars. You've got a Toyota. It's nice and reliable. It gets you where you're going. You can put a lot of mileage on it. But, you're looking over and you see the Lexus or something like that, a Mercedes, and you're like, what it would be like to have that. So, but when it comes down to the backup, we hear that Nathan Peterman has been re-signed to a 1-year contract extension. Sam, what does that mean here when we start looking at the backup quarterback picture?
Well, Heidi, I think it's super important to consider Marcus Mariota and what he is set to make in 2021 if the Raiders are going to keep him. And he's due to make $10.6 million. That is his base salary for a cap hit just above that, $10.7 million. And they already paid off his guarantees. Now, he proved during that one game he played, it was only a game against the Chargers this past season, but he came off the bench and was very impressive in relief of Derek Carr, who injured his groin that game, showcasing his mobility and really playing as well as you would expect or as well as you could have hoped given the situation he was in, coming off the bench to having not played for more than a year. I say all that to say I would be surprised if the Raiders bring him back at that salary. And I'm glad you mentioned Nathan Peterman because it feels like with bringing him back, the work they've spent with him, he's been on the roster a couple of years now, really feels like they've tried to develop him into a backup kind of quarterback and somebody that's, not just a little cheaper, but significantly cheaper than Marcus Mariota. So it gives them options, right? Maybe there's another team in that mold of an Indianapolis, of a Chicago, of a Washington football team who can't find their long-term answer at quarterback this offseason and saw what they liked from Mariota. Maybe they go out there and trade for him. Or if that doesn't happen, if there's not a market that materializes for Marcus Mariota, they can cut bait with him. He becomes a free agent and they walk away without having to pay any of that guaranteed money that was all taken care of in 2020. So the Peterman move to me, Heidi, definitely feels like he's going to become the backup or that he solidifies his role as the backup quarterback. It doesn't make a ton of sense given the needs the Raiders have across the other side of the ball on defense and even on the offense a little bit too as they try and bolster the offensive line and round out their receiving core. Doesn't make sense to pay Marcus Mariota that kind of money to not play.
Do you think, though, that other teams have seen enough in the about 3/4 of work that they were able to see Mariota put in with the Raiders? Do you think other teams saw enough for the Raiders to be able to actually shop him as a backup or make some sort of trade with somebody else?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think it's one of those things where if push comes to shove and we're kind of at the end of that free agency period or it's after the draft and there's still teams that don't have that thing solidified, then maybe they go out there and make a move. But I don't think he's the kind of player right now at least at this point in time. We know about the talent. Let's not forget he was the #2 overall pick and he has had some success in the league. He's been to the playoffs, but it's a long time since we've seen that week in and week out for Marcus Mariota. It doesn't feel like to me he's going to be a top priority or somebody that the team's necessarily going to target as their first option, but he feels like somebody that could come in, start for a year, maybe a prove it kind of situation like he was in this year with the Raiders, although he never really pushed Carr, and that he can land on his feet somewhere else. I think that's kind of the best case scenario for Mariota is where things play out that way. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a guy that teams are going to go after and make a focal point in their plans this offseason.
When you look at the helm of this, which is Derek Carr, is he a guy that can lead this team to the playoffs in 2021?
Yeah, I think so. I think it also depends what he has around him. I think you have certain kind of quarterbacks that elevate the play of everybody around them. You know, that those elite kind of top 4, top 5 guys, your Patrick Mahomes of the world, your Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Derek Carr is quite in that mold of a top 4 or 5 guy, but I think he's right down there in that next tier of quarterbacks. Guys like Matthew Stafford, guys like Jared Goff. I think that when you put those guys with quality supporting casts, when you have some cohesion, when you have a coaching staff, when you have a defense, when you have talent around them, they won. I think he's more talented than those guys and has a greater body of work. He just hasn't had the kind of supporting cast. I think he's definitely a kind of guy that can get you to playoffs. It's just we have to see what they do with this roster. Right now, as we saw this past season, wasn't quite a playoff caliber roster, mainly because of the issues on the defensive, and I thought the offense fizzled out there towards the end of the year. But he's a good quarterback. He has everything you need out of a quarterback to compete, to succeed, and at 29 going on 30, just entering his prime, I expect the best is yet to come from Derek Carr.
And if those young rookies can step up like Bryan Edwards, Henry Ruggs, which we will get into later down the road here in another episode of the Raiders offseason video series, we will definitely let you know what we think about those guys. Keep up with Sam and everything that he puts out in print as well as online at vegasnation.com, as well as by downloading the Vegas Nation app. For Sam Gordon, I'm Heidi Fang. Thank you so much for watching.